Hello, welcome. I'm Pauline from PQW and we're delighted you can join us because we want to share with you one of our beautiful new patterns. We've called it Butterfly Kisses. So we want to show you the quilt, go through and talk to you a little bit about how it's made, and I think it will delight any of those little girls in your family. I think it's, I just love this quilt. It's a quilt that can be made out of any colours. It's a quilt that you could have all different backgrounds. We've used the one white fabric all the way through. But if you don't have enough and you've got fabrics in your stash, each block could be a different background. It is a quilt as you go quilt, as all of our quilts are. I'm very much into teaching people quilt as you go. And I do have my quilt as you go book. This is a book that I wrote some years ago, and it explains how to make any quilt into a quilt as you go quilt. It has lots of instructions in here. So we're going to be using, when we construct this quilt, we use the between the block joining technique that I've come up with, and the book will explain to you step by step how to do it, as will the pattern that you get if you purchase this pattern. So what we've done first, the first thing we've done is cut out our background fabric, our backing and our batting or wadding for every block. We use the Hobbs Heirloom double-sided fusible batting, which I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We iron the 3 layers together and then we quilt. We quilt each block individually. The quilting is the first thing we do. Usually when we make a quilt up, the quilting is the last thing. My little catchphrase is these days is, who said we should quilt last? Let's quilt first. So quilt your block. Then we cut out all of our applique shapes. We put them in position and then we go and stitch them on. And we've used a lovely dark brown thread to do all of our applique, and we've done a blanket stitch or a buttonhole stitch, as some people might call it, on the machine. But if you're a hand sewer, there's no reason why you couldn't do blanket stitch by hand. It's very simple. So it's working one block at a time and constructing that. We've even put some little bits of lace on the little girl's skirts. We've put some lace on her collar. The hair and the antlers, the hair on this little girl, it's just straight stitching. And we've just gone over it a couple of times in that contrast thread. So the one colour thread was used to applique all of these pieces down and to do all of the stitching as the feature. So it's a really, really nice quilt. It's quilt as you go, but this is the back of the quilt. We've put a funky fabric on the back. You could put a different fabric on the back of each block if you chose to, if you've got a lot of fabric in your stash. So I think you will love it, just like we do. So quilting the blocks first and then doing the applique, and then we join the whole centre of the quilt together, and we've used the same colour fabric for our sashing as the background so that it blends in, so it doesn't really look like a sashing. After we've got that all constructed, we then quilt the borders. So we quilted the borders, we did the applique on the borders. After we got all of that work done, we've joined it to the quilt. So this is all you've got under the machine to quilt. You haven't got that border joined to the quilt. You haven't got to wrangle that whole big quilt through your machine to do the quilting. You're quilting one strip at a time. So do this border, do the applique, do the other border, do the applique, the top and the bottom. And then you join it onto your quilt. So very, very simple process. So let's go to my work table and let's show you a little bit about what comes in your pattern pack. And I'm going to talk about the tools that I use to construct this quilt, because if you know me, you know I like the right tools to get the job done efficiently and to get a really, really neat finish when we completed the quilt. So my Quilt As You Go book is very handy for you to have. You may have my Sasha collection. These are, we do over 20 different designs in our Sasha collection now, and we are the original designers of these tools. And I need to put that out there because we have a lot of people that are copying us with cheap and nasty products, and they're just not working for people. I'm very sorry that people are getting charged for something that doesn't work properly. We can guarantee ours do work. when we construct the quilt, we've used the 2-inch sasher tool, this one, and we've used the 1/2-inch tool. So if you have the set of 10, you will already have these in your set. If you don't want to purchase the set of 10, you can buy each one of these individually. So they're all on our website. Have a look around. We're going to use the Roxanne glue basted because I don't like to use fusible web under my appliques when I've quilted first, because I don't want my quilting to go stiff. We're going to use the mesh transfer mat for transferring some of the designs, and I'll show you how to use that. I use the Bohin marking pencil. This is the brand that I like to use because I want a marking pencil that will come out of my fabric, particularly when I'm working with white. And I've got an eraser and a 2B lead pencil there, but I'll show you what I'm going to use those for in a minute. And of course, I use my 12.5-inch squaring up ruler, and this is a ruler that we have on our website as well. So I'm just going to put these aside so that I can then take you on to the next step of putting everything out and getting it done. So now in our pattern, you get a coloured photo of the whole quilt, so that will help you to decide on colours that you might like to use. And you know, you might want to do it really bright. You might want to do it in more earthy tonings, but having the coloured photo will help you balance your colours. And it is good to have a balance of light, mediums and darks when you're constructing the quilt. You might want to use a black background and put really bright colours here on for your appliques. The choice is yours. So in there, we're going to get, in the pack, you're getting all of your templates. There's a lot of templates in your pack, and we'll explain those in a moment. You're going to get a complete layout sheet of every design that's on the quilt and where each section is positioned. But it's not saying that's how you had to leave it. You might want to swap them over. Where you see where there's this dark line here, that is telling you where we've put bias. And all the little antlers and everything are marked on there for you. We haven't put templates in for a lot of the big pattern pieces because it's just too big of a template and you might only use that once. So I'm going to show you how I would trace this off and use that. Then we have another layout sheet, because all of our templates contain more than one shape. Let's pull this out. So you've got this shape here, which you can use. Or you can use, this is where this has been cut out, but you can see here that we've got 2 different wing sizes within the one template. We've got different sizes within this template. Oh, that one hasn't popped out. Get that out. So there's all of these different templates, and there's a lot more than what I've got here that comes in your pack. But this is your template reference sheet. So if we're going to be making this butterfly, we'll just move this across. If we were going to be making this block, which one is it? It's this one here. So I would look at this pattern and it will tell me that I need D5, B4, and we just go through and we pick up all the templates that we need to make each one of these shapes. And it'll take you a little bit of time to understand how it all works, but the good thing about these templates are you can use them to create all different shapes. They don't just need to be used to make butterflies. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare our background and our batting ready for quilting. So here we've got our 3 layers cut out. And in my pattern, I'll give you the sizes of all the different blocks. So you cut those out. And using the Hobbs Heirloom double-sided fusible batting, it is a thin batting, but it bulks up when you start to use it. But being fusible, it means I can iron my 3 layers together. It is a cotton, 80% cotton, 20% polyester batting. Has got a little sticky feel to it, but and that is the very light adhesive. It comes off the roll per the metre or the yard, so you can buy whatever length you want. It is 2.4 wide. So cut it to size. Just pop that over there. Lay your 3 layers out on your ironing surface. And you don't have to cut the backing and the batting a lot bigger because this doesn't shrink in a lot when you quilt it. And then all we do with a hot dry iron is slowly press. Just press it. Now you could use your big regular iron, but please don't use steam. It doesn't like steam, it just absorbs the moisture if you use steam in the iron, so don't use steam. Just slowly iron over till the adhesive adheres to the fabric. Flip over to the back, flatten this out, and if it sticks down and won't, you get puckers there, just pull it back. You can pull it back 1,000 times and re-iron it. If I put my iron on it, it's not going to stick to the iron. There's no gunk that goes onto the bottom of the iron. It's an amazing batting. And I use it because I don't want bulk at the seams where I join the sashings between the blocks. I want it to sit really nice and flat. So there's our piece ready to start quilting. Now quilting can be any technique you want. You might want to do a grid. You might want to quilt a grid in all directions. And if you're going to draw lines on your quilts to quilt on, just use a ruler. And if I want to get a 45-degree angle, I'll use the 45-degree angle on the ruler along the edge here. And I use the Hera marker. This is a tool that will put a crease in your fabric. So all I get is that crease. So you might want to quilt a grid 1 inch apart all the way across. And you might want them just going one direction, or you might want the grid going back and creating a real grid coming back the other way. Or you might want to do free motion quilting on it. There's no right or wrong way to quilt this. It's just whatever suits you. With this one, we've just done loop the loop. We've just looped the loop, free motion. All different size loops. So we just meandered all over it. Once you've got the quilting done, we're ready to start getting our applique shapes organised. So I'm going to come to my little workboard and I'm going to use the sandpaper part of my board. I'm going to get my fabric, put it out on the board, and then I'm going to trace the shape. Now I like to use the sandpaper because my fabric won't stretch when I start to draw around. So I'll come right up to the edge. I'm using this inner part, which is creating this wing here for me. So use your fabric marking pencil, trace around, and then you cut that shape out. So you'll go through and organise all your templates, trace them all out for each individual block, cut them out, and then we start laying out your design. And use your design sheet here as your guide to what is going to go down first. So you'll be able to see we're going to put the big wing down and then this wing and then that wing and do all of that, and then the body will go over the top and then the little head. So we'll start, we've got all of this block done. So we've just disturbed it a bit. So now all we need to do now is start to glue all of this down. So use your Roxanne glue. And I use this glue out of all other glues because I find it doesn't clog up my needle. It doesn't make the fabric stiff, and I know it washes out when I wash my quilt for the first time. So we'll just turn the pieces back and we just put little dots of glue all the way around, and you'll go all the way around and do all of that. Once you get it all glued down, you will press it with a hot iron to set the glue, then go to your machine and start stitching. And I recommend when you stitch with the blanket stitch and you've got a contrast thread on the top, because we've quilted first, and when we did the quilting, because we've got a multicoloured back here, when we did the quilting, we had a white shiny thread on the top and we had the monopoly clear invisible thread on the bobbin. So when we start stitching all of this down, we're going to use this monopoly thread on the top and the bobbin. Then when you stitch all your appliques down, you don't see that applique stitch. If I used a normal thread in my bobbin, I would see the blanket stitch coming through to the back and it wouldn't look nice. So that's the thread I recommend that you would use. Now when we do our sashings, we're going to use the 2-inch sasher tool. We cut our fabric 4 inches wide. It's very simple maths. Whatever size sashing you want, you find the appropriate size tool, you then cut your fabric double that measurement. Fold, just got to get the right side, yes. Fold in and in till it meets. Press with a hot iron. Feed it into the tool, up and back down. We then pin into the ironing surface with a double fork pin. They're the pins I recommend using with the tools because we can pin both sides of that sashing and it gives me equal tension. I feel if I pin with two separate pins, because I put them in separately, I get different tension and one side of the fabric can stretch more than the other. And then all we do is slide with the iron. It's such a simple, simple process. So there's your sashing made. You might choose to put a different width sashing in there. You might choose to put a contrast colour sashing in there. That's purely your choice. Once we get this made, because we've got batting in our blocks, and there's a little bit of thickness there created with that batting, we need to now put some batting in our sashing. So this now is finished 2 inches wide. I'll cut a strip of the Hobbs fusible batting, 1 7/8. We open this out and you can see we've got a lovely permanent crease from the sasher tool. We'll lay this down, fold over and over, and the reason we're cutting that batting a little bit narrow is we don't want to lose that nice edge that we've got from the sasher tool. We want to keep that exactly to 2 inches. And if your batting's a bit thicker and you don't cut it narrower, you'll lose that nice folded edge. So there we have our batting in our sashing. Then that is going to go between the blocks. So we would hope that you would love making this quilt because I think it's just a delight. The way we've joined these blocks together with this 2-inch sashing is exactly the way we've joined the borders onto the quilt with a 1/2-inch sashing. If you want to make your quilt bigger, you could put a bigger sashing here and it'll build your quilt out to be bigger. So in reading my book, you'll understand the maths of all of this and how it all works, but it's a very, very, very simple technique. You don't have to be clever to do this. A beginner could start with this quilt and make a beautiful quilt. You might not want to make the whole quilt. You know, why not make one of these beautiful dollies up and use it as a growth chart for, you know, somebody special. You might want to make a cushion out of this. You might want to make just a little hanger for the wall out of those 3 blocks. You can split it up and do so many different things. You could use the butterflies on other quilts. You can change the expression on their faces. There's so much you can do. But I want to show you now how we transfer these patterns to cut them out. Like you could cut this out if you wanted to, but then you've destroyed your pattern. So what I do when I want to trace something like this, because there's no template for that, I use the mesh transfer mat. This is a mat that's got little holes in it, and it's specially designed for transferring designs onto fabric. So you would simply just put this down on top of your pattern, use a very, very blunt 2B lead pencil. Please don't use any other lead but a 2B because you need a nice soft lead. If you have your lead too long, it will shave down as it comes across the little holes, so you need it quite blunt. Trace your shape. Just hold the mat. You can even pin the mat to the pattern piece if you want. And yes, the lead pencil is going onto my pattern, but I can erase that off later if I want. I can come back and erase that line off. Then all I do is put this on my fabric, put it down here, put the mat over the top, and then I use my bowhin marking pencil. Now my lead is out quite long here. I need to make that a shorter lead because it will just break as it goes over the hole. So hold your pencil up, push down on the top and push the lead right back up inside so you can hardly see it. Now we can trace onto that fabric, and I'm just going to have little dots when I finish doing this. So this mat can be used for many, many applications. I think I've been using, well, probably 15 years I've been using this one mat. So there's the design traced onto my fabric. Now I can cut that out. So when you want to put the feelers and the features on the girls, use this mat as the way of transferring those designs on. When you have finished with this mat and you don't want that design on there anymore, you need a normal paper eraser because the design was put on here with a 2B lead pencil. That will erase off. And then you've got this mat ready for your next application. If they get dirty, just put it in hot soapy water, give it a good scrub, clean it up, and it's perfect for next time. You can iron it, it won't melt. So that's a fantastic tool that I really have loved for a lot of years, and it just doesn't wear out. So have a look at our website, www.pqw.com.au. Have a look around at all the tools we've got. We've got some specials going. You can bundle your individual items up, buy them singly, have a look at all the bundles we've got there because there might be something that you need to help you construct a quilt like this. But enjoy the quilt as you go technique. I think if you're a person that struggles to quilt a big quilt on your little domestic machine, quilt as you go is the way to go. I believe in it strongly and I've loved putting it all together for you. So have a look at our YouTube channel because it shows you on there how to cut your bias properly, how to put it down, how to join your bias strips without sewing them. So many different videos we have on our YouTube channel now, and we would just love for you to subscribe so that we can let you know when you're getting new videos coming up for you to watch. So for now, I say thank you for joining, and till next time, happy stitching. Bye.